Invincible has a power scaling problem, and people are starting to get pissed about it. And for the first time in this page's history, I think the power scalers might be right. See, because if the core of the discourse about Invincible's failing power system was that we want to know exactly how hard Mark or Nolan punchy, I would say that people were being dumb. And if that sounds like a silly thing to be upset about, trust me, there are absolutely people on the internet who are upset that it's hard to quantify how powerful individual characters are because they want to be able to actively compare those characters to characters from other universes. But that's not what's going on with Invincible. See, the vast majority of people who are upset at Invincible's failing power system aren't upset because of the lack of feats. They're upset because Invincible's lack of a coherent power system ruins not only the reader's experience, but also the story. And the true irony of that is that the reason that Robert Kirkman, the author of the Invincible comics, doesn't adhere to what we would traditionally call a power scaling system is because he believes that without it, he's able to write a better comic. But is that true? Why does he think that? And what are these power inconsistencies that people keep screaming about? Well, today we're going to be answering all those questions and a whole lot more, because today we're talking Invincible has a power scaling problem. But before we get to dissecting in a not so positive way an IP with a feral following, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you're looking for one additional Nick video every single week, guys, you can go ahead and find my Naruto reaction series using the fourth wall link in my description below. We are on to the Konoha Crush arc. So, is power scaling truly all that important? Well, regardless of how I usually talk about those who call themselves power scalers, unfortunately, the laid-bare truth surrounding both action comics, action manga, and action anime is that not only a coherent power system, but also clear and understandable power scaling is incredibly important. And not just so I can sit here and say,
Well, actually, Goku would be able to beat Saitama in a fight.
but because power scaling in an action-based universe tells us as readers how to feel about certain events. It teaches you what counts as a serious fight and what counts as a trivial spar. It teaches you what character should survive this fight. And therefore, if somehow the inverse becomes true, it shows us that this character is going to have to undergo some kind of change over the course of this fight to gain a leg up. It teaches you when a fight is under control or when fear is the appropriate response to the unveiling of a possibly new antagonist. See, we understand that we should feel fear when Jiraiya inevitably comes up against not only Conan, but also Nagato, because it's been made clear time and time again that Nagato sits atop the power scaling of all of the Akatsuki. That is until obviously we get into Obito, but that's further down the road. Yes, we understand that Jiraiya is powerful. We've never seen Jiraiya fight somebody as powerful as Nagato. And Nagato defeating Jiraiya means that Naruto fighting against Nagato is an uphill battle. Jiraiya is a legendary Sannin with decades of experience who taught Naruto how to be a sage. And therefore we understand when we see Naruto teleport into a destroyed Konoha that this battle against Nagato is not going to be an easy victory. But on the inverse of that, when all of the disaster curses try to press Gojo during the Shibuya incident, we understand Gojo has this fight locked, which is what makes the reveal of Kenjaku's connection to Geto and Gojo's ceiling in the prison realm all that much more surprising. Well, yes, it's fun to be able to rank the top 10 strongest characters in a universe strictly so we can talk about who's the strongest. From a narrative perspective, a clear power scaling system that puts people in certain categories is important for teaching the reader when to be scared. But once that framework begins to slip, well then, the reader doesn't know when to feel tension. They approach a battle where the main character has to fight against one of the top 3 most powerful people in the universe with the same level of anxiety that they do when the main character fights some no-named bug, because we don't know how strong anyone is. And that's the real issue with Invincible. Mark has to fight against Battle Beast, one of the top 3 strongest fighters in the Invincible universe in the earlier seasons of Invincible, and he almost dies. Now, obviously, we didn't know anything about Battle Beast or how powerful he was at that moment in time, and looking back at it now, we can say, wow, that was an incredibly unfortunate matchup for Mark. But Mark receives a comparable amount of damage while fighting against Master Liu, a comparable amount of damage while fighting against Omniman, and a comparable amount of damage while fighting against Conquest, both times. And the wildest part about all of this is that Mark is supposed to be getting stronger in every single one of these fights. First he fights Battle Beast, and then he fights Omni-Man, and then he fights Master Liu, and then he fights Conquest. But if Master Liu is able to battle and almost kill against the black and blue suit version of Mark, why isn't he battling against other Viltrumites? If the Thraxans, after Nolan destroyed their entire planet, were able to create suits that were able to bang with the strongest iteration of Mark that we have supposedly ever seen in Season 4, why aren't they being asked to join the coalition of planets? Why isn't Master Liu being sent out to fight against Conquest? And thus every time the Mark rolls into a fight, it feels as though it could be life or death. But that doesn't mean that there's no power scaling there. I mean, there's a broad hierarchy. There's clear gaps between your average heroes, low tier Viltrumites, high tier Viltrumites, and the people that exist above them. Or at least that's what the show wants you to believe. But then it does things in the face of that hierarchy that make no sense. Why are Tech Jacket and Rexplode able to kill alternative Marks? When Rexplode almost died to a dude with a gun, and Tech Jacket seemingly can't even pierce the skin of other Viltrumites. If I'm not mistaken, and I don't think I am, Tech Jacket wins a 2v1 against alternative Marks. And I get it, these are canonically lesser Marks. But that doesn't mean all that much when you consider the fact that our Mark is actively being compared to Omni-Man in strength. And if Omni-Man is a high tier Viltrumite, then it stands to reason that our Mark is also a high tier Viltrumite. So Tech Jacket killing 2 or lesser Marks should still be equivalent to Tech Jacket killing 2 low tier Viltrumites. And yet Tech Jacket from that moment on has been the dedicated fodder mopper, doing no actual damage to any of the Viltrumites they ever fight and simply blasting away all of the enslaved soldiers that Viltrum uses. And I get it, Rexplode exploded his entire skeleton, which is a ton of mass to explode, and therefore it kind of stands to reason he was able to kill an alternative Mark. But that kind of plot convenience in the face of actual power scaling is the core problem we're talking about today. But unfortunately, it's not even just side characters like Tech Jacket and Rexplode that represent this dichotomy of how power is approached in the Invincible universe. In fact, the more prominent a character is in Invincible, it feels like the more inconsistent their power is portrayed. And with nobody is this worse than with Nolan or Omni-Man, because there are scenes where Nolan is framed as the end-all be-all. In the literal first episode, he kills all of the Guardians of the Globe, the Justice League of the Invincible universe. He flies through Thrax's portal and spends months eviscerating an entire planet. He flies so fast through Thraxa, he literally lights the atmosphere on fire. He lifts entire mountains with one hand to find hiding scientists. And then in season 4, after defending Themestria, it takes him and 5 other people to hold up a Viltrumite ship. Now I get it, from a physics perspective, there is a big difference between picking up a static object and catching a falling one. And who knows, maybe Viltrumite ships are built out of heavier materials than a mountain. But like, come on, this is the guy who sat on the event horizon of a black hole just to stare into it because he was sad. Do you know how insane that is? The gravitational pull of a black hole is so intense that light can't escape from it. Black holes are so supermassive that they warp space-time to such a degree that if you spend too much time around a black hole, time will move slower for you. And if you take these high-tier moments from Omni-Man, it genuinely appears as though he's operating at a level of strength beyond anybody else in the universe. Then we get to season 4, where for some reason on the planet where Mark is unconscious for a couple of months after a second battle against Conquest, and we see Nolan struggling to kill a bug. Now I get it, this bug is massive, and for all intents and purposes, it's much more interesting to watch Nolan fight against a bug than just rip its head off. But there's no acknowledgement of this bug's strength. See, you can show Nolan struggling with this bug, that's fine. But establish that he's rusty, establish that he's tired, establish that these bugs are stronger than Nolan anticipated. Bring Oliver into the mix. It's very clear that Oliver is weaker than Omni-Man. And have Omni-Man try and teach Oliver how to dodge incoming attacks by dragging out the fight against this bug. But by simply having this essentially Centiscorch, is that it? Is it Centiscorch? It's close to Centiscorch. Anyways, by having this gigantic bug alien actually be able to press Nolan to the point where none of his punches do anything and it's able to eat him, we as readers have to ask the question, why aren't we using these things to fight against the Viltrumites? I mean, Omni-Man is the coalition of planets ace in the hole. And yet Anissa, who from a narrative storytelling perspective shouldn't be as powerful as Omni-Man, is shown dispatching a bug just like the one that Omni-Man fought in season 4, though substantially larger, in one punch. She just flies through its head. But that confuses the average reader. Is Anissa stronger than Omni-Man now? See, because if Nolan can be sold as both an apocalyptic force and also somebody who struggles against a bug in a one-on-one, does Does that mean that Anissa, who didn't struggle with an even larger bug, is an even larger apocalyptic force than Nolan? Or is the comic simply changing how powerful these two people are because one scene needs struggle and one scene needs domination? And this is where Invincible shoots itself in the foot. It scales for emotional effect before it scales for system clarity. And this problem is as prevalent for Mark as it is for his dad. See, readers can accept the hero growing stronger. They can accept emotional urges. They can accept adrenaline making somebody stronger. In fact, readers have tried to ask Robert Kirkman if the reason that Mark is always able to prevail over other Viltrumites that seem stronger than him is because Viltrumites don't have adrenaline, but humans do. And therefore, even though Mark is half human, that half of him allows him to overcome people who should be stronger than him. Readers reached this hand out to Robert Kirkman and he smacked it, laughing in their face about how power scalers try to make the most out of anything. But that would make sense. Oh, hey, Mark is able to see these massive surges in power because of his half-breed nature. We see things like this happen all the time. Genya in Demon Slayer, Ichigo in Bleach, time where the interbreeding of two races gives the outcome of that interbreeding the strengths of both races. And yet we can't even apply that logic to Mark. And listen, that's not even just a convenient way to explain Mark being more powerful than other Viltrumites. It is a pointed conversational point saying that the Viltrumites would be stronger if they interbred. And consider the fact that the Viltrumites consider themselves to be this godly above all race, an isolationist group of people that view every other race of people as cattle. Actually getting stronger by breaking their isolationist views would be an incredible commentary on people who for a long time believed things like eugenics, clearly stating that a racial hierarchy doesn't exist. But no, Robert Kirkman just views this as power scalers trying to ruin his story, without acknowledging that establishing why somebody is powerful is as good a way to move forward story beats as literally anything else. And thus, all of these problems keep bringing the fandom back to one core central talking point. The power scaling in the power system of this universe is inherently broken. The comic teaches you one lesson about danger. Conquest is a high-tier Viltrumite, one of the strongest Viltrumites in the Viltrum army, and he almost kills Mark twice. And thus, when Mark is able to defeat him not once, but twice, okay, well, Mark is probably ready for the highest tier of Viltrumites. But also, there's a mob boss who could turn into a dragon, and he's as strong as Conquest. See, the lessons that we learn about danger in Invincible are adjusted when a different scene needs a different result. This is why Nolan's strength ceiling is such a large point in Invincible discourse. And the same thing can be said about Mark's floor. And thus the best and most distinctive takeaway from all of this discourse is that Invincible often treats strength like a narrative tool, without really worrying about creating a stable system. Invincible is inherently a universe anchored in the idea of instant gratification. We need Mark to be exactly as powerful as his foe in this fight because we want the fight to be as interesting as possible. This is why Mark and seemingly everybody in the universe always scale exactly to each other whenever they cross blades. Because if every fight is Invincible, Conquest, Omniman, Thrag, and Battle Beast mopping the floor with their opponent on a fight-by-fight basis, that isn't all that interesting. However, in order to chase this instant gratification of making every fight cool and interesting and equal, we lose something much more important: long-term tension. Because when your audience loses the ability to understand what kind of threat they're looking at, they lose the ability to know when they should be nervous. If I don't know who Nolan should be able to one-shot, I don't know to be surprised if Nolan is struggling. If I don't know who's able to injure Mark, if I don't know what Mark is able to bounce back from, I don't know when Mark is truly in danger. And this is best encapsulated in the most recent episodes of Season 4. Yes, obviously, we understand that Conquest is a massive deal. But if Mark can just simply survive after being donut holed, seemingly not only reconnecting all of his organs, but regrowing his spine in the process, why should I ever be concerned about Mark being injured? And I get it, in Season 4, we have had moments where Mark simply one-shot an enemy in front of him. The best example of this being when he fought against that elemental queen in hell. But I have no perception of how powerful she is. Oh, she's able to defeat Daemon Darkblood, his sister, and a couple of other demons in hell. Cool. That means nothing to me. Account of the fact that I've never really seen Daemon Darkblood fight. He's a PI on Earth. So even when Invincible does try to show us that Mark is clearly stronger than somebody else, it feels like they're more doing it for the comedic effect of showing us, haha, Mark is playing with somebody, than actually to set the precedent that Mark is here and the other person is here. But the worst part is, because those kinds of things are still baked into Invincible, it has enough structure to create expectations, but not enough consistency to preserve them. And once once that starts happening, the reader is no longer reading danger through a clear hierarchy. They're reading danger through whatever the current scene needs the danger to be. And when fear stops being measurable and becomes arbitrary, we're stuck in an infinite cycle of more and more instant gratification. I need the fights to become bigger. I need the fear that's being established to become larger. The gore needs to be over the top. There needs to be a bigger and bigger goal being tied to every single fight. Because there's no background context doing any of the work for the fight that I'm reading. I need all the context in this fight. And that, unfortunately, is not a great place to be. But then again, what do I know? I'm just the guy who yells about the problems of Invincible on my podcast. But what do you guys think? Do you think there's a problem with Invincible's power system, or is the internet just being dramatic? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. I'm sure the Invincible fandom will be nice about this one.